All right, and welcome to Hat-Trick Sports Talk. I am joined as always by Shane and Brandon. How are you guys doing today?
Ow, my tongue.
Pretty good.
You said you're eating steak as we're doing the show, which is
Oh
pretty
yeah.
remarkable, to say the
Yeah.
least.
And I was yeah, I'm just gonna for the first bit here, I might just be casually eating a steak off to the side. Kind of a long story. I don't really want to talk about it. Anyways.
You're just having dinner. What? How is it a long story?
Oh no. That
Yeah.
fact that's happening to take place right now.
Yeah, who eats dinner at 7?
Yeah, I don't eat dinner till pretty late at night. Yeah, it is 7:12 right now as we're recording.
But yeah, no. And then when you started the meeting or when you started recording, it said continue or leave meeting. So I put the steak knife between my teeth so that I could click continue, and then I cut my freaking tongue.
Oh,
Oh my
ow.
God.
I'm all right. So, anyways, what's new today?
Okay.
Okay,
Jeez.
that is one of the weirdest ways we've ever started the show ever. My
Not one.
sincere
I
apologies.
think it's the weirdest.
Okay, moving on to some NFL stuff. We're going through week 2. Brandon, I'll start with you. Reaction to Browns, Bengals, and Joe Burrow's national TV debut.
Um, I think I said this during the show. I believe Joe Burrow will be the future of the Bengals. Um, but currently he looks like he's under attack
Mm-hmm.
because his line is terrible, and at one point he got like speared out of his shoes when he got sacked. He like got hit, fumbled the ball, and then another guy came around and just absolutely destroyed him, and his head like whiplashed and hit the ground.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh my God, Joe Burrow is gonna be out for like 3 weeks with a concussion, but like
He's really tough.
the camera like panned to the sideline, and he just standing there with like a shell shock look on his face. That if anything, I would say was basically him thinking, God damn it, I didn't get hit like this at all at LSU.
Yeah, that Bengals offensive line is terrible. Joe Burrow to me looked fabulous though. He looks like a franchise quarterback to me. Shane, what is your impression on Joe Burrow so far through the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think, I wasn't sure what to think of him. Not necessarily because of how he is as a player, but just going into that organization. I didn't know how that was gonna go because, let's be honest, they're not the best team. But he himself, I think, is really carrying the team already. Um, and if they don't find success this year, which doesn't look like they will, I think they could. Within the next few years here. I mean, I don't think. I think the days of the Pittsburgh dynasty are numbered, and I mean Cleveland is Cleveland. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And then Baltimore will obviously continue to be good for the next several years here. And so, yeah, I mean, I like the future for them. I think I mean, it's still early, but just from what we've seen, I'm pretty impressed by Burrow. I think the biggest thing for him is not necessarily his mechanics or his physical talent, because it's pretty good, nothing amazing, but it's his mental game, his drive. He's really in it to win it, and I think that's what will help him as time goes on.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's very committed to winning. I think that offensive line is ultimately going to kill that offense. If the offensive line was just middle of the pack better, in terms of rankings, Joe Burrow would be able to get the ball out faster, and the Bengals offense would look much more fluid than it does. It's clear that AJ Green is his favorite target. He does enjoy throwing the ball to him, of course, considering he is their best receiver. Right. and he seemed to right away sort of gravitate towards him, at least in this game, getting the opportunity to watch every snap of him. All 56 throws, which was a little much, but you understand it considering the scoring and how the game was going. He definitely has a bright future ahead of him, although I do predict he will be the most sacked quarterback in 2020. As for the Browns, Shane, I'll start with you with the Browns. Did you learn anything from this game from the Browns side, or do you kind of know what to expect the rest of the year with them?
Yes and no. I mean, people are looking at that game and going, "Oh, look at Baker, he looked great." And it's like, okay, yeah, but look at the defense that he was facing. And then, even look at the Browns defense. I mean, they almost got beat by a rookie quarterback in his second start with a terrible O-line. I mean, this is I don't know. I think Cleveland was lucky to win this game because Baker's fine. I mean, he can win some games, but he doesn't. I don't think he takes advantage of Odell and Jarvis Landry and all these guys that are there. And as a result, it's just kind of the Nick Chubb show. And he had a great game, but I think it all kind of rests on his shoulders in a way. And with the way the game is today, I don't really think you can do that. So.
And Kareem Hunt had a nice game as well. That's a really good 1-2 punch for them moving forward. Brandon, your thoughts on the Browns?
The Browns. I'm not impressed with them, like they are, everybody's being like, oh wow, they're so good now that they've supposedly taken a step forward. But again, at the end of the day, they played one of the crappiest teams in the league,
Mm-hmm.
Like, they played freaking the Bengals. Like, I'm at home, exactly, with fans. Not many fans, but still fans.
Yeah.
And I'm just not, like, there's really nothing for me to feel that hyped about for the Browns, like, show me against someone good, and I guess I will say what I heard this morning on the sports radio in Seattle, but at least they're winning the games they're supposed to win this year so far.
Mm-hmm.
You know what matchup I'm really excited to see?
Which one?
Is, I know exactly how it's gonna go, but Bengals Ravens.
Yeah.
Because I want to see if Burrow can do more against that team than Baker and the Browns were able to. They only scored 6 points?
Yeah, the Browns scored 6 points on the Ravens, yeah.
Right. I don't know. It'll just be interesting to me. I mean, Baltimore's still going to kill them, but I just, want to see how they do, you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially on the offensive side, as you mentioned. Keep in mind, the Bengals even last week played the Chargers, and Tyrod Taylor is capable at best. So the first 2 matchups with the Bengals haven't really showed us much, other than the fact that the Bengals offense with Joe Burrow is much better than it's been in the last few years. As for the Browns, their secondary is honestly just so terrible. Defensive line, they're pretty solid, but secondary is brutal. Joe Burrow got so many holes on that defense, and it was even worse with the Ravens last week. I mean, they were just able to throw all over the yard. That secondary needs to be patched up. They have good players. They have young players on that secondary. They should be playing a lot better than they have. So moving forward, that's the biggest thing. Our fantasy star MVP for the week is Tyler Boyd with 20.2 fantasy points. Good game for him. He got one touchdown in the game. That was kind of the main reason he got those 20 points. But moving on to the 10 o'clock slate. First game I want to highlight here is the Rams and the Eagles. Brandon, I'll start with you with the Rams, of course, signing Robert Woods to a contract extension, worsening their cap even more moving forward long term. So speak on that, and then on, of course, on this game against the Eagles.
Yeah, Rams versus Eagles, honestly, just on paper, seems like it could be a fairly mediocre game that kind of deserves to be in that 10 o'clock slot. These are both teams that I feel like didn't perform awfully well week one, and they're both teams that, to be frank, I am not that interested in seeing play. However, I think the Rams will absolutely destroy the Eagles because the Eagles are just somehow once again have found themselves in the same situation they were in last year, which is really beat up from the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Shane, when you look at this matchup and you look at the Eagles, of course, being up 17-0 last week to Washington and then losing it, they absolutely need to win this game to move forward with their confidence. What are the keys for the Eagles in this matchup?
Yeah, I'm still trying to process that loss. I really don't know how that happened. Geez, well, the Eagles are a strange team to me because I thought that they were going to be like 11-5. I think I had them going as the third seed. And I figured teams like the football team and the Rams
That's proper. That's good.
would be a walk in the park for them, but that wasn't the case last week, so who knows what to expect in this game. I think offensively, I think they should be okay. They're going to have Sanders, which will really help the run production. Wentz, when healthy, he's obviously really good. The Rams' defensive line is pretty good, but the Eagles' offensive line isn't that bad themselves. So, what I worry about though is on the defensive side. I think they really need to cut down the Goff's pass game, especially with his connections, like with Robert Woods, for instance, who was a big part of their win against Dallas. They were constantly connected, and I think if they can limit the Rams' offensive production, I think they should be able to win the game. But will that happen? I mean, I don't know. It's we saw how they struggled against the football team. I still hate that name, but
It's temporary. It's 1 year.
well, yeah, I know. I mean, it's better than what it was, but yeah. So, anyways.
And then speaking of Robert Woods, I did want to speak on that contract extension, 4 years, $65 million. Brandon, the Rams cap situation has gotten worse basically by every week, it seems. They're kind of stuck with the team they have for the next 5 years. Do you think that's a benefit for them long term, or what's your feeling on the Rams now in their cap situation as it continues to get worse?
I don't think the Rams really have a way out,
Mm-hmm.
Literally I think the only way for the Rams to get out of their cap situation is to quite literally cut it to the studs and start again.
Yeah, I mean, it would cost them a lot of dead cap. They're already paying a ton of dead cap for Todd Gurley. But I think Gurley is the main reason why they're able to pay guys like Robert Woods as much money as they have. But yeah, it's pretty brutal. Shane, what are your expectations long term for the Rams with this Robert Woods contract?
Yeah, I think it just further puts them into a just kind of a situation, Because you look at, well, let's see. You look at this team, they get guys like Woods, obviously, who are really special players, and it's great and all, but you need the supporting cast, and as long as they have this cap issue, they just won't have that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't. I think in the meantime they have enough talent to just be kind of okay. But I don't, I don't think that they'll be particularly good or bad for a while. Because they do have Sean McVay, at least for right now, assuming he doesn't get fired sometime in the next 5 years or whatever. But and he's a good coach, so they'll always have something, I think, with him. But who knows how good they'll be necessarily.
Yep. And then Shane, I'll continue with you. In terms of the 10 o'clock slate, what games are you looking forward to? Is there one specific game that you're looking at other than Rams and Eagles?
Panthers Bucks looks interesting to me. Just because I want to see how Brady bounces back. You know what I mean? Or if it has affected him or whatever. You know what I mean?
What were your thoughts on Brady's struggles on Sunday last week?
It's a giant combination of a few things. For starters, I think Brady, as he has gotten older, is not as productive as he used to be, obviously. Not that he's bad, but, I mean, that's bound to happen with age. He's already quite unathletic as is, so. But, I think it's, no OTAs, no preseason, new team, new offense, new coaching staff. It's just a lot of new. I think it, he came from a place where he was in the same, the same building, same coach, same organization, same system for 20 years. Yeah, the players changed and would come and go quite often in a place like New England, but his structure was always constant. You know what I mean? And so when you have to throw all that away and start new when you're 43 years old, and then go and play a defense as good as New Orleans for your very first game, it's, things are going to be a bit messy. I mean, it's kind of bound to happen. Mm-hmm. I don't think that they will stay like that. That's why I kind of want to see this game and see, because, I mean, Panthers struggled defensively, so I want to see how that works. You know what I mean? How they do against a team like that. But, yeah.
Yep. Brandon, what's a 10 o'clock game you're looking forward to?
49ers, Jets. No, I'm just kidding. Probably Lions, Packers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be interesting. I think the Giants and the Bears could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Falcons and Cowboys, because I think the Falcons have a good chance of winning that game.
Yeah, I'm looking most forward to the Falcons and Cowboys. I look at the Falcons and I think about Todd Gurley. This defensive line proved to be pretty nice, this Cowboys offensive line on Sunday night. So I think that's going to be a fun challenge, and we'll see what the Falcons are as we move forward in this early part of the season. It's funny you mentioned Niners-Jets because we have no George Kittle, and their receiving group is pretty depleted. So Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to have too many players to throw to, although he has been a huge fan of Jordan Reed in camp. So I expect that to be an interesting 1-2 punch for them against the Jets. It probably will be a blowout, but just note that the receiving weapons for the Niners are much, much lower than you would expect. Or
that means that they'll be running Raheem Mostert even more, which means I get more fantasy points.
And then, and Lions-Packers should be fun because they're always playing close games. Vikings-Colts is another one to keep an eye on throughout the morning or early afternoon if you're on the East Coast. As a fun one to see how Philip Rivers bounces back after a tough week one. And then a few matchups here in the 125 window. Of course, Cardinals and Washington. That one seems pretty simple, but Chiefs, Chargers, and Ravens, Texans should be fun. Shane, I'll start with you on a preview for Ravens and Texans.
Well, I think it's a complete mismatch in basically every way. I think Baltimore wins 41-10.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this. Houston is just. I think their one saving grace last year that they had Deshaun Watson and Diop, who were always a constant, reliable connection force on the offense. And now that's gone. And so now you look at this team, it's like, well, what do we got? We got Deshaun Watson with some, B minus receivers, a so-so running game, no offensive line. Defense, you got one good defensive end who's injured half the time. I'm looking at you, JJ Watt.
He had a hip injury all this week.
Yeah, of course.
Wait, is he hurt again?
Yeah, he had a hip injury this week.
Wow.
He'll play on Sunday by all accounts, but he did have a hip injury that he was
like,
nursing this
but
week.
like, I'd like to just take a step back and talk about the fact that this is a guy who started out being like a defensive juggernaut, and now he's had 3 seasons in a row where he's had early injuries that has led to him having a surgery that has had him out for the rest of the season.
He had what did he have? I forgot what he had last week.
He's had 2 arm surgery. I believe he had a hand surgery and an arm surgery.
Wasn't it like oblique or something? Or it was like a torn. I think it was a torn pec last year.
Something like that, but it kept him out for the rest of the year.
It was 6 weeks. Yeah.
The Texans just haven't had him for the whole season for the last 3 seasons, it seems like.
Yeah, it's been a huge loss for them for sure, especially without Clowney the last few years.
Yeah.
Brandon, I'll continue with you with Chiefs Chargers.
Chargers did not impress me. I think that's going to be a pretty big blowout. I think Chiefs win. Well, I think Chiefs win 30 to 21.
I look at the Chargers and just go, Tyrod's not very good. Of course, I think, as I said earlier, I think he's pretty much middle of the pack. Defensively, they are not very good. It's just an absolute mess there. Defensively, the Chargers are going to have a very difficult year. Will we see Herbert? Probably not this year. I don't think so. But if we do, the Chargers are going to be a more interesting story moving forward. And let's go to the big matchup of the week, the Patriots and the Seahawks. Brandon, I'll start with you with the Seahawks. What are the keys to stopping Cam Newton in this offense if you're Seattle?
I think, and this is funny, I think make him throw the ball.
Yeah.
Make him throw the ball because you don't know what his arm's going to be like. And we know that he's not that accurate to the air. And if you throw the ball, if he has to throw the ball, it's going to make him less likely to run the ball, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's also going to be another thing, containing his scramble ability.
Mm-hmm.
I think Belichick will know that he has not a great team this year on offense. Like, he's going to want to keep the score to an old school, hard nosed, run the ball on for both teams to like keep it close. So I think one key for the Seahawks, my last key for the Seahawks will be get a big lead, keep it. You know, like just don't let them get ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that we spoke about last week with the Seahawks was the aggressiveness of Jamal Adams. Shane, with that aggressiveness, how is that going to change how the Seahawks game plan for Cam Newton?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, because you look at a guy like Jamal Adams, and he's a great defender for somebody like Cam Newton because I mean, when you're watching him, no matter where the play is, Jamal Adams is just there somehow. I don't know how. It doesn't matter what it is. Oh, Jamal Adams is there. Imagine that. And so, I think you get if you get Cam Newton to run, which they're probably gonna do a bit, I think you just got to get like him, Wagner, keep him contained, and then maybe it'll force him to throw a bit, and then you can use your coverage to stop him basically, because like Brandon said, he's not that accurate. So, I mean, if he starts throwing, I mean, I'd expect Diggs or Adams to get a pick at some point, probably. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple because the Patriots offense is pretty limited, all things considered. So, I don't think it'll be too hard for the Seahawks to shut them down defensively. But, you also have to worry about their defense, which is pretty good. So,
yeah,
Patriots defense, that is. So,
yeah. And then with the Patriots, what are your keys if the Patriots are going to find a way to pull this one out?
I think trying to shut down the pass game would be a big thing. Really blitzing, getting Wilson pressured, and forcing him to throw or whatever, because they have a pretty good secondary too, so they can make plays. That's, I think, the biggest thing for their defense. But then, offensively, I think they are probably best off just pounding the rock, getting lots of run plays. Because that defensive line isn't great, so you can do some damage with that.
Yep.
But, yep.
And then the Monday night game this week, we'll get to this on our Sunday post show, is the Saints and the Raiders. That should also be a fun one, opening up Las Vegas. So let's move on to some other topics for the week. And we are starting with some more football, beginning with some college discussion here. Not as much with the games specifically, but more outside the games. We're starting with LSU. They've had a lot of positive cases of COVID-19. Brandon, you specifically put this topic in to discuss. What are your thoughts on LSU and all those positive cases?
Well, I think it's worrisome that no one is really feeling.
No one cares.
No one cares that LSU's that Ed Orgeron's out here being or the. It's just the fact that the head of LSU is being able to say, "Oh, literally every player on our team has had it," and
Yeah.
nobody gives a crap. Like,
Yeah.
it's concerning.
It shows that there was no real discussion with the safety protocols. And let's be completely honest, that it really doesn't seem like there's been as much discussion focused on that piece other than the idea of, oh, let's return to play. And that's been my problem. And that's why I said I don't care about college football this year, other than maybe one or two games, just because there just doesn't seem to be a focus on the actual players or coaches and their health. And then on top of that, the games themselves aren't too interesting. Shane, your thoughts on LSU right now?
Well, Ed Orgeron, this is a guy who is like, saying before the season, we'll have half capacity at the stadiums. It'd be great. So he clearly, to me at least, he seems like one of those people who thinks that the virus is just no big deal, and the kids will be all right. Yeah. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of weird that, the kids, you would I'd imagine you'd want to be really looking out for their health. Granted, it doesn't affect younger people as much, but still, it doesn't mean that it's, just no big deal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There is still risks that come along with it. That means that they will continue spreading it to other people who might be vulnerable, whatever, you know what I mean? So, I think they certainly, the NCAA certainly has the money to be able to do testing and all this stuff to make sure it's safe, but here we are. I don't know, it's just kind of weird.
I think you bring up something really important, and this is something that we've continued to discuss throughout the offseason in college football, throughout the summer, about the idea that this actually really isn't an NCAA issue. It's more the conferences, it's more the individual schools trying to get these tests or whatever it may be. I think that's kind of a really important point to make as well, that this really doesn't feel like an NCAA run thing. So it doesn't make the season feel that interesting for me as well in those aspects. And then moving on as well, the Big Ten is going to resume on October 24th, and the Pac-12 is going to make their decision on Thursday to return to play before January 1st of 2020, so the new year. Brandon, your thoughts on the Big Ten playing and the Pac-12 making a decision to play? Do you think it's a good idea for the Pac-12 to make this decision at this moment? Or is there more pressure to make this decision instead of actually looking at all the facts and maybe it not being the best idea? What are your thoughts on it?
I think there's just a lot of pressure right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, honestly, I was talking to Connor about this, and I said, this is the first time in my entire time as a fan of football that I don't really care. I don't really care about college football. I don't care about. I would watch it if Pac-12 came back, but it doesn't have that feel to me.
Yeah, sorry, I just hit my table there. But no, yeah, I feel the same way. This has been something that I've constantly said, that this doesn't feel like a normal college football season. We don't even know if we're going to have the college football playoff or how that's even going to work. Like, are we really interested in watching 3 SEC teams again in the playoff? I don't think so. I don't think from a ratings perspective, people will be that interested in that. I don't see how this season makes any sense still, because most of the teams are playing, most of the top level teams such as Oklahoma are playing, lower tier programs, and and Brandon, you pointed this out in the past as well. It's kind of created some overreaction to how well these teams are playing, how well these quarterbacks are playing when they're not really playing the most incredible talent. Clemson's not playing a team like Alabama. I think they're playing the Citadel this week. So, can you actually speak on that piece a little bit more? How it sort of seems like this constant overreaction to these games.
Yeah. It's like when you have. I'm just tired of teams like Clemson being allowed to play like Citadel or something like that, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's such a hard game." It's like, no, you're playing the Citadel. Like, just say how it is. Say that they're gonna destroy them. Say that it's gonna be a boring game to watch. Don't act like sports fans are some idiots who can't, tell what's gonna happen.
And this was something that actually you brought up as they played Wake Forest last week. Shane, your thoughts on the overreaction across the country to some of these matchups?
Well, I think when people look at this season and how, let's be honest, how lackluster it is, people see a matchup, any matchup, and they're like, "Oh, it's Clemson." Who cares about the other team? It's Clemson. And honestly, I'm gonna piggyback off of what Brandon said about college football as a whole, because I don't really, as you know, I've been at kind of a weird place with college football in the last couple of years, just because I feel like every year it's just Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, maybe Georgia, and a couple other SEC schools that
LSU.
that just dominate every year. It's just the same thing. It's all about these like 4 or 5 teams, and that's not really interesting to me as a viewer. I want to see all sorts of teams getting up there. So, honestly, I'm kind of with college football. I'm kind of over it until they make some changes, if that'll ever even happen. For instance, limiting the amount of money teams are allowed to spend on recruiting,
Or how many recruits they even get.
Well, yeah, so that it's
Top level recruits.
almost like a salary cap for college. Just so that different teams, different teams can get better instead of just one
Dominant team.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of other things, but that's, I don't know, that just bothers me, and I'm sure that's gonna continue. So
Yeah.
oh well.
Look, when you're talking about recruiting in specific, obviously, it's mostly about the particular athlete picking that particular school, and where they're actually going to school for education purposes and stuff. So that's where it becomes complicated. But how you would do that with recruiting is a star system. How many 5 stars can you get? How many 4? How many 3? How many 2? How many 1?
Yeah, sure.
It is impractical from the educational perspective, which is why it's not in place, and why it probably will never be in place. But the general point is that because of the root of it is recruiting. It's the idea that there's just not a lot. These guys just continuously going to these top programs, and unfortunately, it does hurt some of these athletes who are top level recruits, and then eventually they lose favor, and then the transfer market becomes sort of a free agency, and we've seen that the last couple of years, especially at the quarterback position. So it does create a whirlwind of unforeseen issues as well, especially over the last couple of years.
I mean, I don't really see the issue with people transferring though, because
Well, I'm not saying that it's an issue, but it is interesting when you're talking about recruiting, right? In the sense that, a team like Oklahoma signs, I don't know, two 5-star recruits in back-to-back years, and then one of those recruits says, "Oh, you promised me I'll play. I'm gonna leave and go to Missouri or something." I'm just making an example, but it's sort of at the root of the recruiting. It's this idea that you just keep getting guys, sometimes regardless of position, and then eventually the transfer market becomes sort of like a free agency type. Not saying that it's bad for the game. You can make an argument it is very good for the game, but at the end of the day, it is an issue from the perspective of just not every student stays all 4 years because these colleges just keep getting these top recruits over and over, and guys kind of get passed over, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we're now finally going to finish with the NBA, the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Actually, before we get to the two matchups, let's talk about the Clippers and their absolute debacle, losing to the Nuggets after being up 3-1. Brandon, I'll start with you. What went wrong with the Clippers in 2020?
The Clippers didn't really have much chemistry. That's it. Like they had a bunch of players who played well on their own, but just didn't ever really combine.
Mm-hmm.
At least I see it that way.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way. Shane, was it more than chemistry for you, or what was it for you with the Clippers?
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a few reasons, obviously, but I think also, I mean, I think Denver is just playing with a lot of fire. you know, I mean, yeah, there are chemistry issues with Clippers, and I mean, on top of that, they didn't look like they were totally trying, almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of it almost felt as though they were like, okay, well, we'll get Denver, but let's think about how we're gonna beat the Lakers. It's like, no, let's think about the series we're on right now. Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, Denver just seems really focused, really determined to try and get as far as they can. They have, I mean, Murray has just been incredible. He's probably the best 3-point shooter right now in the tournament.
Duncan Robinson, I probably give that nod to, but yes.
Yeah, that's fair. But he's good regardless.
I think the major thing with Murray for me is the fact that he's just ridiculous in elimination games. Hasn't played too well tonight. As we're recording this, the Lakers are up by a good amount on the Nuggets, which I think is to be expected. But we'll talk about that matchup in a bit. So a couple things with the Clippers for me. One, obviously, as you guys said, is the chemistry issues. That's the highlight. After the game for me was really kind of where I had some issues and some of those holes kind of opened up for me. Paul George, in him saying that we didn't really think this was a championship or bust year. We didn't act that way. Now I understand you have 2 years plus a player option for both him and Kawhi at this moment. But at the same time, the idea that this wasn't a championship or bust year is ridiculous because for the Clippers themselves, I mean, you paid 7, 8 first-round draft picks. You basically mortgaged your entire future to pick up Paul George. So if this wasn't a championship or bust year, you're putting more pressure on yourself next year to make this work. Because if it doesn't work next year, I imagine both Kawhi and Paul George are going to leave. I don't see how they stay if this doesn't work. If they lose in the second round again, next year, it's over. And then the Clippers, what do they have? They don't have any massive amount of assets to move, considering they let go of basically their entire decade of picks. So the idea that this wasn't a championship or bust year is preposterous. From a player's perspective, from a coaching perspective with Doc Rivers, and especially from the organization. I mean, they made a risk with this move, and it's a massive risk. If they don't have a title, they should have had it this year because let's be honest, they had the best team here. They probably will have the best team next year. But if they don't win in 2021, there's going to be some real discussion about whether this was the right decision to bring in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And then with the particular matchups, of course, Denver and the Lakers. Again, the Lakers are up by a good amount right now. Brandon, how long do you expect this series to go? How many games do you peg this series to go? Do you think Denver actually has a real chance to compete in this series?
I think it's going to be a sweep.
Why do you feel that way?
Because I feel like I just feel like the Lakers are really quite good, like better than the Clippers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to put my finger on it, you know. I can't quite figure it out.
I feel like Denver's magic has run out, and I look at the Lakers and I go that I feel like they finally have some chemistry. I feel like at the beginning of the bubble and the restart, they were in a spot where they just kind of didn't really know what it was, who they are as a team. And now playing Denver, I think, is definitely an advantage. I see it going 5 or 6 games. I think 6 is probably about fair. But either way, I do feel like the the Lakers, have started to really figure this out. And that will help them, especially if they go to the finals. But Shane, do you feel like this will be a long series? Do you think Denver's magic has kind of run out?
I mean, I would think so, but considering the giant curveball that has been 2020, that probably won't happen. So I mean, I don't know. Like, I still don't totally know what either of these teams are.
You don't feel like you understand where the Lakers are at right now as a team?
Lakers, yeah, but it's because they're. Yeah, I think their chemistry is getting better, but I still think they're too LeBron AD reliant.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, if that works for them, then great. But come finals time, I don't know how that'll work against Miami or Boston, who has 5 guys that are all pretty good. They're not, none of them are LeBron or AD, but they're competitive to say the least. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
how much does playoff Rondo, Rajon Rondo, of course, we talked about this last week, him coming back, how much does he affect that as like another piece for them, or guys like Kuzma and of course Caruso stepped up in a few games? Are you looking to see more from the other, or I guess let's say the supporting cast pieces around LeBron and AD for them to be successful not only in this series but in the finals?
Well, I think so. In this series, I think they would probably be able to win with the LeBron AD duo, but come finals, I don't think they could. To be honest with you, for no matter which team it is, Miami or Boston. So yeah, I think that definitely helps. Especially having a kind of a veteran presence there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's good to have experience, especially in in playoffs. As weird as the playoffs are this year,
Mm-hmm.
Just with the bubble and everything. So
Last topic here, of course, is the Eastern Conference Finals. The Miami Heat have been absolutely dominant in this series. Third quarter, Boston kind of tapered down a little bit in the second game yesterday. Brandon, what has impressed you about Miami in this series, and what do you feel about Boston's dysfunction? They had a bit of an argument in the locker room after game two. What do you feel about both of those pieces in this series?
Miami is the better put together team mentally, I think. Like Miami, I actually would say this. I think one of the differences mentally is that Miami has come into this series with absolutely no expectations. They've come into the playoffs with absolutely no expectations. Like I feel like and by that I mean a lot of people had no expectations for Miami.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Celtics, everybody's like, "Oh, it's the Celtics. They should get to the finals, or they should get to the Eastern Conference."
Yeah.
Um. So I think it's the perfect storm right now because Miami. I think Miami is just straight up the better team. You know.
Mm-hmm. Shane, how much has the mental aspect of the bubble, especially with Miami, with their workman's attitude, has helped them throughout this playoff run, especially in these first two games of this series?
Well, I mean, I think it's something you kind of need, considering just how weird a bubble is, and I mean it can't be easy on players. Just feeling very isolated like that, and I mean, I think I agree with what Brandon said about how Miami is. There's no expectations. They're just out there to win. They're not. They don't have this pressure on them that so many other teams have felt, and I think that's really helped them because you look at Celtics and everyone's like, oh, they might win the whole Eastern Conference and and then the Lakers, oh LeBron, AD, yeah, they're awesome, and then Miami, yeah, whatever, you know what I mean, and I think they're kind of taking advantage of that, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean I really I feel like Miami is gonna win it all, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Do you think because of those reasons?
Well, that's part of it. But also, I mean, their roster is no, they don't have a lot of like stars, if any, really, other than Butler.
And Bam, I would say as well.
Yeah, fair. But no, they don't have that. But they're young, they're fast, and they have a lot of players who are not stars, but they're really good. You know what I mean? That's something that I think
They've basically done
every other team lacks. You know what I mean?
done the Raptors treatment from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Fast, not a ton of stars, but players that can come together, click together, and play as a team. Which is kind of what I think is going to be the future of the NBA. Like not like super flashy all-star teams, but like teams with one or two leaders and then a bunch of good players that can play together as a team and click.
There's something interesting about Miami in this frame, right? In the bubble frame, and this is why, as Shane said, this is why you could make an argument that they're probably the best team left here. It's because, and I still feel like the Lakers are the best team here, but with Miami, it is like Jimmy Butler, Bam. Bam is star supporting cast, but I still think he's a star. But when you're looking at that team in totality, you're looking at a great mix of veterans and young talent. Guys like Kendrick Young, Duncan Robinson for me has been really important throughout this playoff run as a guy who can shoot threes. You need a guy who can shoot threes. He was running around like Steph Curry out there yesterday. It felt at times. It's really impressive because, as Brandon said, I think that's an important comparison. The Raptors last year, even go back to 2011 with the Mavericks. This is the recipe to win with one, let's say, superstar. We can call Butler a superstar and then Bam more of a star, emerging superstar, I guess would be the best way to actually put Bam in a sort of category, if you will. But I think that team, the Raptors team last year and the Mavs, feel in a lot of ways like Miami. And that's why I think that argument has a lot of validity to it for me. And that is it for today. Anything else you guys want to add before we end?
Nope, that's it.
Shane, how was the
Yeah,
steak,
no.
man?
Oh, it was great. I forgot my camera was off.
Good to hear. All right, we'll see you back here on Sunday for our weekly NFL Sunday post show. A lot of great games there, and enjoy the playoff games as we go through the weekend. We are close to the finals. The finals start on September 30th, so we're about 12 days away from that as well. So I hope you guys enjoy the weekend of basketball, football. We got some hockey as well, which we'll check out with the Stanley Cup final. Anything you kind of want to talk about with the Stanley Cup final, Brandon? This is such a weird matchup this year, by the way, before we head out.
Yeah, I think I'm sure we'll cover it next week once it's really gotten going, but definitely not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, with the Lightning and the Stars, it's definitely a weird one. The bubble, see, so definitely an interesting Stanley Cup final as well. So enjoy all the sports this weekend. We also got the U.S. Open in Winged Foot, which has been pretty crazy with Tiger Woods not making the cut. So definitely a struggle there. But we'll talk about all that and more next Friday, and we'll specifically focus on the NFL as we always do on Sunday night. We'll see you all then.